Hey everyone, welcome to another Ask Farmer Hayseed. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. You probably know that because you're watching it. Of course, if I record this and play it later, that's just confusing. Um, Welcome to another episode. Tonight we're going to talk about starting seeds, germinating, and such. Uh, I think there were some other things I wanted to talk about. Oh, a little bit of discussion about Delta 8 THC because I spent 5 minutes reading about it. I really probably should have done a little more research, but here we are. Um, I don't know. I'm just going to start with the Delta 8 THC thing. I don't know a lot about it. It seems to be a more of a minor cannabinoid. You find it in, it's like just one of the things that occurs in plants. It has a slightly different bond. That's why it's Delta 8, not Delta 9. It seems to get you, it seems to be something like half as potent. But people who are using THC for medicinal reasons uh, seem to find that it doesn't make them as high, which means less paranoia, less of the more acute symptoms of, overdosing on THC, which is a good thing because as you do the uh, therapy with the THC, you end up kind of having the tolerance that you build means that you have to put a lot more THC in your body. And I imagine, if you're putting 100, 200, 500 milligrams of THC in your body, that gets pretty intense. So maybe Delta 8 THC is a solution to that. Another thing about it is it wasn't even illegal. It's ridiculous. If it comes from hemp, it might not be illegal, but if it comes from high THC cannabis than it is, and I don't know how they trace that. I don't know how any of that works. Um, so I know more than I knew before, but I don't know very much about this. Kind of an interesting thing to me. I imagine if you have fields of hemp that you can extract enough that's useful, but I'm not sure how much of it actually occurs in, say, like your regular strains that you would get and grow from for the more intoxicating effects like THC and such. So that's what I know about Delta 8 THC. If you know anything about it, um, go ahead and let me know. I think I'm going to go ahead and see if I can make this thing work on here. Make sure that, I didn't put a reminder that I was doing this tonight up, and so maybe no one knows about it, but that's okay. That's all right. I'll try to put this up. Um, I'll try to put it up as a video later on, download it and put it up as a video later, not on if you're interested. Um, okay, well, there's that. Just trying to find this on the old Facebook, which I really don't like having on my phone, but it is what it is, isn't it? So, hey, there's Nate. Someone's there. I guess I don't have to worry too much about this. Um, Weird. Very strange. Ah, screw it. So that's Delta 8 THC. But it's a thing. It's something that I literally have only heard about in the last 3 months or something. I mean, that's the amazing thing about cannabis. You can keep learning and learning and learning. Um, you always get. Uh, there's never a point where you know everything about it. There's always new information and such. So um, I'm kind of I'm stalling a little bit because I'm going to talk about seed germination and I want people to check that out. But got my Plant More Seed shirt on. Very proud of this one. Check that out. That's Bodie. Um, I like. I'm a t-shirt guy. It's ever since I was a skateboarder in middle school. I've been a t-shirt guy. I like cool t-shirts. I have way too many of them. Um, Although somehow a lot have disappeared because my wife is very efficient. Uh, but that's okay because how many t-shirts do you need laying around? But I like this t-shirt, but it's a large. A little, it kind of hangs on me kind of big because I'm not the biggest guy. I need to get more swag from Bodie and Bodie's wife. They both very amazing people. Um, so that's what's going on with that. Tree Star, of course, on my hat. Ivan Gears uh, Jam out in Oregon. If you ever have a chance to talk to that guy, do it. He's if you want to know anything about cannabis, I'm not saying. I mean, he doesn't know everything, but the guy is almost encyclopedic about what he does know. So um, can't say enough about that business. And um, I guess I'm going to go into seed germinating now. And the reason why I have access to when I have a legal situation, I have access to a large number of seeds that are over 40 years old, or maybe right at 40 years old, maybe between 35 and 45 years old. And that's a long time. I mean, you might expect 1 out of 100 or even less germination on that level because they just dry out and lose vitality. Um, so that's I've been asking around to some of my friends on Instagram. Instagram, if you aren't aware, is where a lot of the kind of cannabis culture, breeders, growers, all of that. Even though it's like completely illegal on Instagram, which is the dumbest thing ever, and every once in a while a cannabis page will just get clipped at 50,000 followers. It got clipped because it's against the terms of service, whatever. Uh, but I asked some of my friends on Instagram to share some of their secrets or what they would do to. Hey, it's Ivan. There he is. See, he's right there. I should have really read more about that, Ivan. I forgot that watching videos is tough for me, which is weird because I'm making a video right now. It's so weird. That's like meta negative. But I'm going to talk about that next week when I can study up on it more. But you're welcome to school me here in the comments and let me know what's going on with that. I really should have watched that. I just read a summary of what it was, and basically, there's a guy in hello Ray. There's a guy in Oregon, and he is breeding cannabis that is sterile. So the seeds produce a plant that is sterile, and this is going to matter more and more as people are growing huge hemp crops outside, especially for fiber and um, biomass, because they're going to grow the males right in there with it. And so that's going to make it very difficult to grow herb unless it's sterile. And I should really look up the guy's name because man, I'm really bad at this. You guys know that, right? I'm just really terrible at this. But I keep trying. That's the thing. I keep trying. I keep pushing forward. Um, Ivan sent me a thing about the guy. The guy's name is Seth Crawford, who evidently always wears small shirts. I mean, it is what it is. That's who he is. He's a guy who wears small shirts. But Seth Crawford is breeding specifically. I'm pretty sure he's using genetics. They basically read the genetics. What's it called? Long something. They read the genetics, and therefore they can breed for these specific things by not having to plant the things that don't have the genes in them that they want to. And they're doing this triploid process that's creating sterile seeds. Not that the seed itself is sterile, but that the plant that comes up from the seed is sterile. And it's kind of an amazing thing. And it's kind of the future of outdoor growing for sure. I'm not sure if indoor it'll really catch on too much because you have a situation where you can isolate, but uh, very interesting thing. So that's a complete tangent, but Ivan reminded me that we were talking about that earlier this week. And since I don't do a lot of outdoor growing, at least so far, I've done some, not a lot, then I guess it's probably a little less interesting to me right now than it is to Ivan, who has some different irons in outdoor grow fires, including behind Tree Star. He's got a little outdoor grow there. So now, if you could grow plants that come up sterile and are resistant to picking up smoke terpenes, I think you've got the real future of West Coast cannabis. And that's sort of a joke, but sort of not, because it seems like this is going to be more and more of an event on the West Coast, and that's sad. There's a lot of beautiful forests out there, but it has a lot of fuel sitting on the ground because they've been putting out these small fires for over 100 years. And if you put out the small fires, then it doesn't burn up the fuel, and it just stacks and stacks and stacks. And I know our esteemed president talked about raking the forest, which is fucking ridiculous. but at the same time, there is a grain of truth in that there is so much fuel sitting on the floor of the forest that it just takes one spark, one lightning bolt, and dry conditions, and and then you have a conflagration like we see out on the West Coast. So yeah, fire terps, right? What's that? What's this campfire? My buddy said, "Who cares? You're probably smoking around a campfire anyway," which I thought was particularly funny. But so that's a sad thing that's going on out there. A lot of really premium cannabis growing areas are getting burnt down right now, which I don't know. I mean, maybe that's really good for the soil. It recharges it with phosphorus and such, but people are losing their livelihoods and their homes, and that's never happy. So, well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and talk about germinating seeds. And I got some different ideas from some different people, and I'm not sure if should credit them or not. I guess maybe I will mention who it came from, or at least the Instagram page it came from, because you might be interested in these people. But Slow Nickel is a guy he's in Peru right now, I believe. He is an old school American grower. He is very soil based. He is in, he's very, he's like a disciple of calcium, and he is constantly putting up information about calcium and how important calcium is, especially even calcium carbonate, calcium that's readily available to the plant, and how much pathogen and pest resistance you get out of plants that have plenty of calcium. So Slow Nickel is his name. He's Michael, a very interesting guy, and has some pretty strong opinions, but he's generally bases them on actual research. So maybe someone you want to follow if you want to. He shows a lot of, like macadamia nut and asparagus trials and things like that, where they're messing with calcium and getting kind of amazing results. So Slow Nickel, he said that he himself didn't have any real particular technique for germinating really old seeds, but that he had heard of people filing down the stem end and sticking them in warm water. So there's an interesting thing. You'll see this scuffing, filing sort of situation. There's even a seed cracker, which is it's a little device that'll hold the seed, and you turn a plunger down onto it, and it cracks the seed open. Some people say that just murders the plant. Other people say it's crucial, because the thing that really that old seeds struggle with is breaking the seed shell in order to come out. And if you crack it, then you give it a leg up. Other people say that just opens the young plant to more pathogens. So it's controversial. Show the seed cracker. Ivan's demanding I show the seed cracker. I think the seed cracker might be in my undisclosed location. No, that's not the seed cracker. I got one from this guy named Woodshed on Instagram because I was interested in it, but I've never actually used it. And I think it may be hidden at the undisclosed location. What a bummer. That would be a good show and tell device for sure. Nope. Yep, I'm real organized, as you can tell. I'm about as organized as I am good at doing the show. So moving right along. Let's see, one more drawer. It could be in here. It's a bunch of not seed crackers. What's in here? This is a card file with nothing in it. That's very useful. Very helpful, Toby. All right, moving on. I don't have my seed cracker with me. I got one at one point. The guy 3D prints them, and it has a little metal plunger, and it's interesting. So I may, when I get a chance to, in a legal way, try to use the seed cracker and side by side see with or without the seed cracker on older seeds if it has any higher chances of success. So that's that. Okay, I'm going to read. What the hell? No, that's That guy is stoned. Okay. All right, Will Lopez. I have no idea what you're talking about, but that's okay because we're gonna move on. Chris from Professor P. Chris from Dynasty Genetics says that something that old he would do in vitro. In vitro would be in I guess what we would call in a sterile test tube with a sterile medium like agar. And this is the way I've seen it done before. And I guess one of the drawbacks of this is it can take months and months, 4 or 5 months for a seed to germinate, but that it's a fairly reliable way to make old seeds crack. And I can see that if you have it in a sterile environment, it's sitting there in something that has a certain amount of moisture and sugar already into the medium. That's probably the long term the best solution, because sterility is the big one. A lot of times the seeds fail because even if they barely pop open, then a bunch of microbes rush in there, and if they're not the right microbes, it's game over. So his suggestion, Professor P's, was to do it in vitro. My buddy, I guess he's Mycelium Matt on, because he's got jokes. My buddy Paul on Instagram, he's got his own sort of regimen for doing this, and he has some pretty good success with it. So I'm going to read that. Soak pinto beans in water for 24 hours. Take this water after 24 hours and mix it 3-to-1 with coconut water, and then light scuffing on the seeds, the ridges only. So you're on the ridges with 220 grit sandpaper, and then soak the lightly scuffed seeds in the 3-to-1 legume wash coconut water mix for 24 hours before you plant them or move forward with them. So a little bit complex, but he has good success with that. And I know that pinto beans have a lot of enzymes when you soak them, so that's interesting. Coconut water has sugar in it, natural sugars, and also enzymes. So yeah, I think that it sounds like a solid thing, and he has experience with it. So Mycelium Matt's slightly complex situation seems like it might be a winner. But that brings me to the idea of a seed scuffer. So if you take like 220 grit sandpaper and you put it in the inside a toilet paper roll, and you get a way to cover the ends of the toilet paper roll, you can put your seeds in there and shake it, and only the high points will get scratched by the sandpaper. So if you were to do a lot of seeds and you wanted to scuff them up, a seed scuffer would be the situation. I imagine, like, to cover the ends, you do something like, I don't know, tissue paper and rubber bands, or even aluminum foil, saran wrap, something along those lines. And just, you could actually probably do a little maraca thing while you're doing it if you had two of them, but I don't know. His idea with the 220 grit sandpaper and scuffing, do it in a scuffer if you don't want to take the time to scuff each ridge on the seed. But it all depends on how hands-on you like to be with this sort of thing. So it's an interesting one. So I want to look at this. Dungeon Vault Genetics. His suggestion was using URB, and URB is a microbe. It's a pre-bottled microbe amendment. I think it also has kelp in it, something like that. I'd have to look, but it's called URB. You might look it up on the internet. You should be able to find it. And his suggestion was to soak the seeds in a URB solution, and then what was it? He had one other thing in there that say he was suggesting a seed cracker, soak in URB, that in a seed cracker, and I'd say some nice RO water and a paper towel, and I'd imagine you'd be good to go. So his suggestion is to put them into a paper towel, and maybe that would make some sense on the older plants. I'm not a big fan of paper towel germination. for younger seeds, because if you let that tail grow too long, it starts to grow hairs into the paper towel, and when you remove the seed, you can hear it and feel it kind of ripping, and maybe that's the paper towel ripping, maybe it's young rootlets ripping. To me, it seems like a stressful situation. Um, and if you're on top of your paper towel situation, and as soon as the little tail pops out, you can uh, plant it immediately if you aren't leaving them for 24 hours at a time, because I mean they can grow quite a tail in 24 hours. Then I think there's nothing wrong with paper towel. I mean, it's a way to keep a nice consistent, take a paper towel, wet it, squeeze it so that most of the moisture is out but it's still damp, and put the seeds in there, and put them in a something like a Ziploc bag. Probably a good idea to leave the Ziploc bag open so it doesn't get too humid. Some people might argue with me. It's not my technique really to use. So if someone else has a lot of success with that, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that I'm paranoid about the fact that you get that sort of ripping sensation sometimes when you're pulling the seeds off of it. Um, and so for me, if I have reasonably new seeds, like seeds that are probably viable, I'm going to go straight into a well aerated, high quality organic seed mix. Um, you know, and you don't need many nutrients in there. But I think some kind of good microbes, especially mycorrhiza, which I would add to that mix too. So um, when the seed comes out, the when the roots come out, they immediately start interacting with that mycorrhiza, and the plant can be as healthy as possible. That would be my suggestion. But I think a lot of people are cracking the seeds using the paper towel, and then they're going into a good, high quality organic thing with mycorrhiza. So I might be being paranoid about the whole situation, but I'm kind of a little bit paranoid about everything in cannabis. I feel like you can always do better. You can always try harder. So um, some of these people are in big farms and such, and they don't have time to mess around. So they may very possibly know that it isn't detrimental to the plants, but I don't know that to the seedlings. So um, there's that. Um, so Crybaby Crybaby Genetics, is a real boutique breeder. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a trip to meet. He's a really cool guy, very interesting, very unusual, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He's just not your normal everyday person. He is a unique person, and I appreciate about him. And if you see his Instagram, you can tell that he is deep into cannabis, and that's where his brain is. And kind of look up to him a little bit, because I too am kind of always thinking about this stuff, and his level of dealing with it is very high. So Crybaby says 40 years, dude. I don't know, but sterile everything. And then he says GA soak, and then Circos in the water for sure. So I think GA is gibberellic acid. I think. I don't know what else it would be. I could be way off on this. Uh, I asked him to clarify, and I haven't heard back from him. But that's also it's something that is used to feminize, well, to make female plants produce male flowers, I believe. And so I am not up on why you would use it, and I need to have more of a conversation with him if I can nail him down. But um, Crybaby says sterile everything, and to me is that agar, or is that just being every the water, every do you boil the water? I mean, like what exactly does that mean? I'm not super sure, but that's his thing. And Circos in the water, that's something interesting. I wonder what kind of um, percentages of that you would use. I don't know. This is all an exploration for me too. I ultimately want to take these 40-year-old Mexican, Thai, and Jamaican seeds and pop a few, or get a few to produce roots. That's my total my goal. Of course, I'm going to have a legal place to grow first, but for right now, I'm trying to do all the research I can, so when I do, I'm off to the races on that. So because I'd love to get some of those old school genetics going, start pheno hunting and crossing and doing what I can with them. It's sort of a little dream of mine to bring back some of those old genetics. We'll see if I can do it. Um, so damping off is the problem that you're going to have if you have a problem with your seeds. That's when they start the roots and the stem basically rots, and so you have a seedling comes up and then it falls over and then it dies. And hydrogen peroxide is supposed to be a um, pretty good. What am I saying? Mitigation agent of damping off. For me, if I was going to start seeds, I would soak these seeds in half strength off the shelf hydrogen peroxide for 24 hours. And that way it would kill any microbes that were on the outside of the seed. And I would go into as I said, a well aerated, high quality organic soil with mycorrhiza added. Not too much mycorrhiza, just some, few sprinkles, like salting your food just a little bit. And that's what I would do. But I haven't done thousands of seeds. I haven't, I haven't. Um, I don't have a lot of experience. So uh, take my information with a grain of salt. I've grown a lot more clones, and so this seeds is another thing that is new to me ish. I mean, of course, over the years I've grown them, but I've never been like, okay, how can I get the highest success rate for older seeds or this or that? And so that's why I'm going down this path, and why I wanted to talk about it tonight. Um, so humic acid, yeah, I think that's what it is, Nate. I said it was kelp. I know it's black. That must be humic acid and not kelp in URB. Um, I don't know where you get it around here because it's something I knew of out on the West Coast, and I've seen them at a couple of the trade shows, but I don't know a lot about where you might get them. I'm imagining some of the better grocery stores in Kansas City would be able to get them, but I don't know about that. I'm kind of not sure. So those are the notes I have. What's everyone doing? What you got going out there? What's happening in the land of growing cannabis? I've seen some great looking stuff on the various pages that I follow. I I don't know. I'm pretty excited. I found I knew this, but I hadn't thought of it before. One of the seeds that I've made is called the Last Jedi Son. It is there's a reason for that. I think I've mentioned it before. Um, it is Skywalker, which is a cross of blueberry and Mazar-e Sharif, which is like an Afghani type, an Afghanica for sure. Blueberry is a sativa leaning hybrid with that classic blueberry flavor. And so it is Skywalker crossed with Lost in Space. And I had to name that Last Jedi because it was Skywalker was lost and they had to go find him. But before I went and named a cross that I made something, I looked up the name on the internet and did a little research to find out what was going on. And I found out someone had already released seeds called The Last Jedi. So I called them The Last Jedi Son with the Japanese honorarium. And that is how I'm differentiating what I made to what they made. But so 1/4 of those seeds is blueberry, and the Lost in Space is known for a really heavy resin content, very hash planty. And so, you know, if someone were to hunt enough of the seeds, you probably get something like a blueberry hash plant. I mean, it's got maybe that blueberry's recessive and you'd never find it. Who knows? But you wouldn't know until you hunted several hundred or 1,000 of the seeds, right? So very excited about that. A few people are growing some of those someplace, Missouri somewhere. So I'm hoping to see some blueberry out of that. I guess it's sort of nostalgic for me because blueberry and bubblegum and those in the early mid 90s, late 90s, when you got that, it was really special. And nowadays there's a lot of people breeding and doing all sorts of things, and I'm not sure the stuff is as special anymore. So I'm not sure what the nostalgia is going to be for people in 20 or 30 years. Maybe they'll be like, oh, that cookies brings me back. I need dough flavor in my weed. I don't know. But so the blueberry and the bubblegum are two flavors that I want to play with a lot as I get further along on this journey, because it is nostalgic to me. And I think you talk to old people older than me, and they have nostalgia for other things, like the old skunks, that people stopped growing because they got them busted, because you can smell it for a half mile around the house. And a lot of those have disappeared for that exact reason, is in that, not that it wasn't a great plant or this or that, but you just couldn't contain the smell. And in the 90s and 2000s, when they were really throwing people in jail for this stuff, that was detrimental, majorly detrimental. You grow things like the cookies or a lot of the purple varieties, they don't have that just, wafting smell that goes for miles. They're a little more self-contained. I mean, they have great flavor, but they don't have that same smell coming off of them. So, I guess the roadkill skunk is something some people claim is a myth. Other people claim they have it. It's sort of a holy grail to nerdy growers and breeders like me. And so, um, the problem is that people don't believe. So when roadkill skunk is not not a skunky plant, like it's a plant. The myth is that it smells exactly like dead skunk that you drive by, and that's its smell. So a lot of thiols, not terpenes, but thiols, are where those really, really nasty rank smells come from. Terpenes tend to be a little more, more, what's the word, herbal, maybe is the best way to say it. Gas and herbal and such, but the rotting corpse, the super skunky smells, those tend to be from thiols, in combination with the other things, terpenes and the other compounds that make the smells. So um, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's why you have to find seeds that are 40 years old and try to pop them, because maybe it's lurking back there. Excuse me. All right, Nate's got a question. Okay, Nate's asking about city water. He says there's noticeable repercussions. Good go-to for cleaning a water tank of chlorine and other contaminants. I'm looking into a hose filter, but enjoyed pHing one large water supply before watering. I think for me, the thing that I've used is say like a 30-gallon um, barrel and a vigorous air stone, or actually I just an air pump with um, a weighted down tube down at the bottom, so that it's not the what I've read is that larger bubbles incorporate oxygen into the water better than smaller bubbles. So if you have like an air stone and it's a million small bubbles, you would think that would aerate it more, but evidently that's not true. The larger bubbles, the way they interact with the water, brings more oxygen into your water. So oxygen is going to tend towards killing the pathogens in your water. The constantly recycling motion of the water will evaporate off any chlorine. Um, what is it? Chloralamine is a problem, because some city water supplies use a non-evaporative version of chlorine, because it's they don't want their chlorine to go away. They want their water to stay reasonably sterile. Oh, I got the odds. Excuse me. Sorry. Jeez. So chlorine should evaporate off from your water tank, and also when you bubble oxygen through water for an extended period of time, the water tends towards a 7.0 pH, which if you're starting off with an 8.5 like a lot of us are, or a 9, it's nice to get it closer to there. Then you can use less pH, whatever it is that you're using, to bring it down to your 6.4, 6.5, which is ideal. So a large bubbling water supply, I think, is the best way to deal with water. Filters are good, but um, a RO filter, not RO water does weird things because it is like so devoid of any minerals that I've heard that it actually um, can sort of suck minerals away. Um, I'm not totally sure. I wish I remember where I read that, but that um, RO water is you want some minerals in the water. You want the water a little bit soft. You don't want it just like, is it soft or is it hard? Soft, yeah, right, soft. Um, yeah, yeah. So I mean, I've heard this is bad, but I used to take my I used to use a dehumidifier before I learned about the uh, vapor pressure deficit. So I'd use a dehumidifier and kept my humidity around 40% because I was afraid. Well, I was in the Northwest, but I had a sizable dehumidifier, and I would dump that water into my um, big old aerated mix of water, and with the idea that the aeration would counteract any of the negative effects of any kind of lingering microbes or whatever that came with that water. Some people say that that's really bad, and I don't know if I agree, but I don't disagree. It might not be the best thing because of the way the dehumidifier kind of has a long tube and what's in the coils and how exactly is this all working, and are you encouraging negative vectors by using this dehumidifier water. But that's how I used to do. I had that little thing taped to my it was like a they sell them at hardware stores, like a black drainage bin, that's about 25 or 30 gallons, and I would drip the dehumidifier water and add um, filtered water into it and bubble it, and it was always bubbling. So whenever you walk into the garage, it was there. You could hear the pump going, and that air water was constantly aerated. That's what I was doing. You lose a little bit to evaporation. I'm not sure running the pump 24 hours a day is necessarily the most efficient thing. It's just what I was doing. I seemed to get good results out of it, but since I didn't have a control and I wasn't checking other water sources and stuff, I can't tell you that that was necessarily um, good or bad. And, that's always something to remember. If you're doing one thing one way, you can't really know if it's good or bad unless you've tested it, unless you've done side by side testing, unless you've taken two clones or two crops or whatever and done them and taken notes and figured it out. And that's how you get rapidly better at growing technique wise, um, just in general, is that you figure out what the truth is by using the tools you have at hand, which are observation, cloning. Cloning is kind of important because ideally you would have, you know, two you have four clones all planted in the exact same size pots, exact same medium, exact same environment, and then you change one thing on two of them and leave the thing the same on the other one and see if that one thing makes a difference. And then, you can imagine that if you had 10 clones, you could do two plants that were your control that were normal, and then you could do four different things, one thing each on four different plants, or on four different pairs of plants, and then compare them. And you'd say, oh, their URB was really awesome because that's the only thing I changed, just adding that, and these look great. I added calcium to those, and those also look great. But I added sulfur to that, and it didn't look as good because I'm not sure why. Maybe it killed the microbes in the soil. I mean, that's like basically scientific research on the most basic level is to make comparison studies, and then you can have answers to questions. So, is your city water really detrimental? Would you know unless you were doing it side by side? It's hard to fully tell. Yep, definitely. Anaerobic is a little sketchy. Many more pathogens that maybe not even pathogens, just microbes that break down and tend to kill off living matter because they live in places where there's stagnant water and everything. And there's reasons for this. It's not necessarily bad, but it's bad when you're trying to grow something to produce for you and you're introducing a lot of things that live in a dank swamp where everything rots. Like So KNF, Korean Natural Farming, I was kind of intrigued by it because you have this ability to create these things on your own, but uh, there's no like controls in it. It's kind of like making compost or whatever. If your compost pile isn't getting hot enough, how do you know that the compost you're making is healthy? Um, it's tough when you aren't, if you don't have a scientific research lab at your fingertips, um, then you're just tossing it out there. And honestly, some people like that, and I actually have a little bit of me. I like to be able to be like, oh, I just threw a bunch of crap in a bin and let it sit for 2 months, and then I poured it on my plants, and they were amazing. But how do you duplicate that? How do you do it again in such a way that you move forward um, in your studies and your practice? And that's, I mean, the best thing about growing is you can get whatever you want out of it. You're doing it for you, or for maybe you're doing it for a patient as a caretaker. Um, and so do it however you want. But if you really want to get better, you need to figure out a way to get controls in such a way that each crop that you go through, you are learning something that will make the next crop better. Um, that's the best you can do, to learn a little and to get a little better. And sometimes you lose an entire crop, but you gain a lot of knowledge. And so it's really sad at the time because you didn't know that that was what russet mites look like, or you didn't know that broad mites looked a lot like iron deficiency, you know. And then you learn, and then in the future you're better for it. So uh, just don't forget that this is a journey. It's most people that start doing this as a hobby really pick it up and really start to enjoy it. And so that means they're probably going to do it for the rest of their life, especially with it becoming legal to grow, you know, either medically, or once it becomes recreational, legal to grow a certain amount of recreational plants, like in Oregon and Washington, California, and I think Colorado too. Um, and probably coming to Missouri, eventually coming to Kansas. You know, give me 4 plants outside in the summer to grow recreational. See what I can do. Maybe I'll botch it. Outdoors is a whole different ball game than indoors. You can't control things, and outdoors in Kansas or Missouri is a whole different ball game than outdoors in Oregon or Washington or even California. A different set of issues, a different set of problems, um, a whole new group of things to learn. So, you know, don't let any of your setbacks, you know, hold you back too much, or don't get too sad if you have setbacks when you're growing. I mean, of course, you want to knock it out of the park every time, but you're not going to. No one does. Everyone has times that they have results that are a lot lower than they wish they would have had. And if you use that as a teaching moment, then in the long run, you're going to be stronger. You're going to have better plants. It's just one of those things. You learn a lot more from failure than you do from success, unless your success is closely monitored, well annotated, and using controls where you can learn things from that, and you succeed. Well, that's hard. That's probably better than failure. But most of the time, we drop the ball, start slacking a little, lose focus or whatever, and then that's where the negative consequences come in. But if we make those teaching moments, it's not negative in the long run. So, all right. Exact same medium, newts and strains. The only difference is not filtering the water. And so Nate here he's got essentially the same situation, except I will introduce this. The ambient temperature outside was different, and that can make a huge difference on the environment, unless your humidity and temperature were exactly consistent. Then there's another vector that might change your outcome. So I know it gets complex, but always remember that, like, if you think that you've got it figured out, cannabis will surprise you. Cannabis will teach you. Mother Nature is the only master. and cannabis is bigger than all of us. And so I guess I'm going to harp on something I was saying the last week. All cannabis use is medical, um, and I just want to remind everyone of that. If you take it to relax or feel better or to enjoy something, that increases your well-being, and I would argue that that's medical. We don't, that we make distinctions like recreational and medical and everything because that's what the laws tell us we have to do. But um, cannabis is medicine, and if that medicine is medicine that makes you feel better, and that's all it does, it doesn't treat a condition, or it's still medicine. And it's just good to remember that. Uh, so I guess there's one more thing I want to talk about. This is just a real simple. Um, uh, it's just a simple thing, but talking about concentrates and extracts as it relates to cannabis, and a lot of times this is a little different because um, it is it's different in science. Like in science, anything that is extracted is a concentrate. In cannabis, the difference between an extraction and a concentration is where you concentrate the trichome heads or concentrate the active ingredients without solvents. And I don't want to get into the thing about water being the universal solvent because it really isn't. Because if something isn't water soluble, then water doesn't solubilize it. So if you're making water hash or sifting hash or generally making some kind of trichome extraction where you're breaking the trichome heads off and using those one way or another, that's a concentrate. Um, uh, Ricky, you didn't miss it. You can watch it again. That's the beautiful thing about it. But I know. Um, but the so an extract is made with a solvent like butane or alcohol. Those are extracts in cannabis. There's different distinctions in science in general, but in cannabis, this is just the distinction. So and that this comes it reminded me because I said something about legal. This comes from the distinction made in recreational and medical states where you can concentrate cannabis when you have a cultivation license, but you cannot extract it unless you have an extraction license. And that's because extraction uses solvents that have their whole own host of situations such as explosiveness, flammability, and that sort of thing. Concentrates are made in a mechanical way with water or screens. And so, just to clear up that little point, concentrates are trichome heads concentrated, essentially external metabolites gathered together, whereas extractions are when you use a solvent to pull the cannabinoids and external metabolites out of the plant. Um, so there's that. And also, I had a long talk with my friend Stephen Starkey about what it makes organic, and he made me realize that one thing about organics, as I speak about them, is there's a lot of sort of grower slang, a little um, uh, just bro talk when we talk about organics. Um, and I think that actually appeals to some people that don't like the situation where everything is so tightly defined in the world. But having a conversation with someone scientifically minded about the intricacies of what organic, or is it natural, or is it biodynamic, or is it probiotic, and I struggle with that. I don't have a word. I don't have good vocabulary for what I strive to do. I think natural is probably the best way to put it, probably better than organic. In that organic is a slightly confusing term. Um, and one thing that people who do grow organic for a long time, they know that there's a little bit, they know there's a little bit of ambiguity about the whole thing. Like just because something says it's organic doesn't mean it is grown in a natural, healthy way. And it's a lot like being a vegetarian for a long time, which I have been. You can't be 100% vegetarian. Sometimes you're fed food that has meat in it, and when you realize it, you stop eating it. But you don't freak out. You don't curse people. You don't vow to never visit that. You just go with the flow. And that's really what I think organic or natural or biodynamic or probiotic growing is. It's a lot of doing your best to try to make things as natural as possible, and trying your best to make sure there aren't pesticides or herbicides or fungicides that are detrimental to your health or the environment's health in what you grow. Doing your best to feed your plants in a natural way that is not detrimental to yourself or your pets or the environment. Um, and it's soft on boundaries, and it's hard to talk to someone in a meaningful way who is very rigid in like what they're thinking. And a lot of scientific people are like that. They're like, no, there are definitions defined by this and that mean something, and you're over here like a grow bro just being like, it's like, natural. But when you do it long enough, it's a sense, it's a philosophy essentially, where you are constantly trying to learn as much as you can about the situation and make it as healthy for yourself and your environment as possible. I guess that's the best way to say it. So, um, you know, it's a little bit hard to define exactly what organic is, especially since it's been sort of bastardized by people who make a lot of money in food off of it. By also, there's OMRI, organic certification. They only visit like 5% of the people who are OMRI certified a year, meaning that you could go 20 years and get visited once, or possibly not even once because it's constantly cycling. So organics uh, organics are tough. Um, and if you want to grow organically, the my best advice is to do your best. Try to do it better each time. Try to do your best to be educated on the inputs you're using. It's about trying. It's not about succeeding 100%. It's about striving. I guess really what it is to me is that growing organically is a journey, and you're striving to do the best you can at what you're doing. But I don't know if you can ever arrive at the spot, especially growing indoors, because there's the whole question about our artificial lights and burning a bunch of either fossil fuels or sucking power off the grid to grow your plants. How can something be natural that you're growing in such a way? And then other people argue that you can use less um, detrimental inputs if you can control the environment, so that although the lights are artificial and the heating and cooling is artificial, that you are lowering the chance that you're going to need to use something that isn't natural on your crop. So it's an ongoing discussion. I'd like to thank Stephen for having that conversation with me. He's always very mentally stimulating about these things. That's what I have to say about that. If any of you ever want to talk about organics or what it means or what it's like to try to grow this way for a long time, or if you have your own seed starting methods, I'd love to hear them. I'm into learning about this. All the information I presented to you today, I was asking about just a couple days ago because I want to learn, and so I thought I'd share it with you. So we got Nicholas coming up next. He's talking about sort of like the challenges that growers face, and I know some people never like to talk about when they fail or when they misstep or whatever. Some people are cool with it. I think the longer you go with growing, the more you get over the stigma of like, oh, I made a mistake, and you realize, oh, dude, I got to tell other people about this because I don't want them to make that mistake because it was horrible for me. When you're new at it, I think you feel like, oh, I got to show everyone that I can do this right all the time, which you won't be able to. You just won't. You might knock one crop out of the park, and then the next time, all hell breaks loose. So that's what I got for tonight. Check out Nicholas's show. I've seen pictures of the herb he's growing. He is growing fire. Although he seems to like cookie strains. I don't know. We have to talk about that one of these days. Cookie strains they're delicious. They're beautiful, but they're so low yielding. It's sad. but they're pretty. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me, everyone. I'm going to sign off now. I invite you to message me if you'd like, comment on here, do what you like if you want to interact with me in any way. I really appreciate when people challenge me or give me new information. And even though sometimes I may not seem like it, I'm in it for the long term conversation, not just to prove that I know everything. So that's that. I really appreciate you all very much. I look forward to interacting with you more. And here's to a brighter cannabis future. Peace.